Speed Dakota here, and today we're going to be doing the front brakes this time on this 04 VW Jetta. It's the same one that I did the back brakes on around Christmas time. So now we need to do the fronts. So, stuff you're going to need for this, if we go over here. So for tools, you need your standard set of hand tools. I'm wearing these gloves as well, so just in case anybody's wondering, they work very well. I found them the other day. I like big pry bar, and you'll see why in a second. Of course, your big flat blade screwdriver is a must always. 4-inch C-clamp, and that little knob keeps falling off. I'll have to figure that one out. Now, I needed to use my impact driver because the rotor screw is really stuck on there. But we'll see how the other side yields. Of course, little hammer. I needed the big hammer because the wheel and the rotor were both stuck on. Your wire brush, typical as well. You need a 7mm hex socket, a pair of needle nose pliers, a 3/8 ratchet, and I got my big impact gun out, but really all you need is a good size breaker bar with an 11/16 or 15mm socket on there. And make sure, I've already got the one side apart, that you find this little wheel lock key, because that guy's really, really important. Or else you won't be getting the wheels off, and they're a real pain to find. They're not that big. Okay, so parts you're going to need. You're going to need your silicone brake lubricant. Now I'm using this new stuff. It's called Disc Brake Quiet. You spray it on the back of the pads. You can see right there. It's kind of a bluish color. I've used... This whole can cost about $8, and I mean, you hardly use any of it for every brake job, so it's going to last a long, long time. If you don't want to do that, then you can just use your silicone brake lubricant on the back of the pads, which I've done as well. Anti-seize is a must. You need an OE set of brake pads, and this guy here has a brake level sensor built into it. I'm going to talk about that later. Of course, if you're changing the rotors, you're going to need new rotors. As you can see, these rotors, if you look from a side profile, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a real bad taper at the bottom, and there's a huge lip at the top. If you look from a side profile, you can see that this one side's just a little bit narrower than that side. So these European vehicles tend to get a pretty good lip on the rotor here. So that's why I tend to not reuse these rotors. And this one looks like somebody's just slapped a set of pads on it because it's pretty beaten up and this lip is huge. So it looks like it's had a second set of pads on the same OE set of rotors. So we're changing the rotors while we're at it. So while I'm waiting for the pads here to dry, you can install them while tacky. But we'll go take the wheel off on that side. Alright, so first step, we got to take off these little plastic clips. And how we do that is we use a pair of needle nose pliers. We go put one needle in the centerpiece. Oops, one on the outside here. Pull. I don't know why these things are on there. All I know is they're horrible to get off. So next we're going to pull off the wheel. This is my trusty impact gun. Fail. Okay, so now we're going to pull the wheel off. There we go. Alright, so if you got a wheel that's stuck on like me, you take your BFH. Underneath the vehicle, come from behind. and let it fall on your work light like that. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn the key on. We're going to turn the wheel so that the caliper faces outward. It will actually stay there without springing all the way back again. Using our flat blade screwdriver in order to pop off the two little dust caps that are on the back here. Like that. And like that. Now what I like to do is I'm going to take my screwdriver, go into the caliper here, and pull back on the rotor a little bit. Or pull back on the pad. There we go. And that'll bring the caliper in just a little bit, so we're able to get it off. So now taking our 7mm socket or 7mm hex bit on our 3/8 ratchet, I'm going to go inside that little tube that we took the cap off of. I'm going to loosen that one. Looks like I'm going to need an extension for that one. For some reason I didn't need it on the other side. Oops. These ones are a little tighter for some reason than the other side. This is not a Torx bit. That's what most European manufacturers like to do. Everything in Torx bits for some reason. So now we got both of them cracked loose. You can loosen both of them off all of the way. Then once you kind of got it out, kind of apply a bit of a twisting load and pull on it, and it should yank it the rest of the way out. If not, use the same needle nose pliers used to yank the caps and pull it out. Same thing for the top. Come on. There we go. Again, just go in there with the pliers and pull it out. Sort of. There we go. Now, we gotta pull the caliper off. This is usually not too difficult, but because there's such a large lip on the end of the rotor, the pad gets caught in it. So really, there's two main methods of doing this. What I like to do is I like to stick my screwdriver or pry bar in there and yank on it. And this side's also stuck in as well. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to get my screwdriver in between the pad and the rotor. I'm going to pull a little bit to push the caliper piston in. And that'll get my pads out of the way enough to where I can remove the caliper. And I forgot the little detail right here is the brake connector, the brake warning connector, and I can't figure out how to get it off. Okay, so how you get this guy off is you take a small flat blade screwdriver, you stick it in behind there. That should release the tab. Ah, crap. Ah, fuck off. Just enough. There we go. We're going to be able to pull that guy out. We're going to sit the caliper somewhere safe-ish, so it's not hanging by the brake hose. So keep this guy out of harm's way. And now it's time to take the rotor off. So now this one was a little bit tricky the last time, but I don't know if we'll get lucky on this side or not. Somehow I doubt it. Sometimes if I hammer around it, no, doesn't look like we're going to have any such luck. So, we have to dig out the impact driver, which is this guy right here. Oops. There we go. Make sure it's going in the right direction. So when you put it on there, you can actually feel it twist in a certain direction, like that. It's almost like when you cock the gun, your impact gun back and forth. So if you're holding this end and you spin it to the right, that means it's going to tighten it. So if you hold it and you spin this guy to the left, that's loosen. So what you want to do, you want to grip the impact driver and turn it the direction you're trying to turn it while you smack the back of it, and it'll work its way loose. Hope that was clear. Probably not. I had a fun time editing that one. Now to deal with the rotor that's really stuck on there. Now, don't want to pry against anything except for something that is metal. That's cast iron metal. So what I like to do is I like to put a screwdriver in between the caliper mounting bracket and the rotor and just gently tap it. It'll pop right out like that. And there comes the rotor. Alright, so before I go any further, we're going to treat the pads, the back of the pads, with some disc brake quiet. So, basically what you want to do is you want to apply a fairly liberal coat to the back of the pads, like that. Don't ever spray the friction surfaces. That's the one major no-no. So now we're going to let this stuff sit. It'll tack up, and once it's tacked up, then we'll put them back on the caliper. But for right now, we're going to clean everything up, and we're going to put the piston back in to facilitate those new brake pads. Alright, so let's do a little housekeeping in here. So using our handy wire brush, I'm going to clean the spots on the steering knuckle. In this case, there's no actual caliper mounting bracket. It's actually built into the steering knuckle. So we're going to clean these areas off. Nice and clean. Forget to get the undersides. And now, another place to get is around this edge right here, where that rotor was really stuck on the face of the hub is another good place to go on. We don't want any of that on there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of anti-seize. And what I like to do is put it in the contact areas around here. And now, I always like to put some around this little lip here, because that's where the rotor tends to get stuck onto. Don't be afraid to be liberal with it. Now we're going to take our new brake rotor. We're just going to clean the back side of it for now. Just the friction surface. It's got an anti-rust coating on it to prevent them from rusting while they're sitting on the parts store shelf. Dry that off. Alright, and the reason I only want to clean the back, because we're going to hoist this guy into place. So the reason I only clean the back usually is because when we lift these guys into place, I like to hold it by the outside, but also they tend to get a little messy sometimes. On the front side. So we're going to line it up. Just leave it like that for now. We're going to take a little bit of anti-seize, put some on our screw. This will make it come out with a little less of a fight next time. Now, these screws are not entirely necessary, but they're real nice for these cars because they tend to hold the rotor in place because there's no studs to hold them in place. Oh, this is a pain. There we go. Unlike a Honda, where you get the studs to hold the rotor in place, there is none on this, so it's really nice to have that screw in there. So now that we've wrestled our rotor into place, we can clean off the front side, which may have gotten dirty while we were putting it in. Give the little backside a little bit of a wipe too, just in case. And dry it all off. Now what I like to do is put a little dab of anti-seize on the face of the rotor where the wheel sits on. This will help us from having to hammer that wheel off again. There we go. Now what I'm going to do, using our big friendly flat blade screwdriver, I'm going to pop the pad out of the caliper, the piston side out of the caliper. There it goes. This one's the one with the little brake switch on it. There's the brake warning, which I'm surprised hadn't gone off yet. Now there's two options. We can either push this through like this, which seems to be the easiest option. And for some reason it's quite stuck on there. Like that. Or what we can do is we can just pull it out from up top. Like that, but that seemed to be the easiest route. So again, more housekeeping. Using our handy wire brush, we're going to clean off the caliper piston and the little forks in the back of the caliper here. Anywhere that the pad contacts, we want to clean up. Alright. So, now it's time to draw the piston back into the caliper. Okay, so now it's time to draw the piston back into the caliper. So using our big C-clamp. Now this is only a 4-inch, so it's not that big. We have to bring the clamp all the way out in order for it to fit in it. It's a very long caliper. People give me hell about this, so please don't. This is a metal piston, not a phenolic one. I don't really like to push against the piston if it's a plastic piston. Typically older Chrysler, 90s Chrysler vehicles such as the minivans had phenolic pistons. Then I push against a brake pad. But because I have the little swivel end on the end of my clamp, it's not going to hurt it by pushing right against it. Especially because I'm hardly giving any force. As you can see, I just use one finger to twist this thing in. And that's all it should take. If you're having to put some force into it, you likely have a seized caliper. So once it bottoms out, lightly bottoms out, don't reef on it. Pull the clamp all the way back and all the way out. Okay, so now our pads, they're pretty tacky. That's pretty good for me. There we go. So, put that guy in there. There we go. All it does is just pop right in. And this guy here, again, all it does pops right in. So now before we put the caliper back on, careful that we don't mark the rotor at all. Put a little bit of So now before we put the caliper back on, we're going to put a little bit of anti-seize right here where the pads contact, both top and bottom. This will keep everything sliding smoothly. You can see the little marks where they are. Here we go. Now there's a little bit of a trick to getting this caliper back in. So first off, we want to make sure that the hose is not twisted. What we're going to do is we're going to put the bottom of it down like this. Oh dear. So where we can see these two, like, so here's the pad here. Oops. Come on. Alright, so this is how we put the caliper on. So this part here is the pad and this part here is the caliper. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that the pad is on the top side of this, okay, right here, and this caliper is underneath it. So how we do it? So basically come straight down like this. And in. That's all she wrote. We're going to plug our electrical connector in. Make sure it's right side up. Should click just like that. Be sure that this wire isn't touching anything. It shouldn't be, but just double check. Okay. So now we're going to take our caliper sliders, clean them off. We are going to put a dab of silicone grease on them. If I can find where I put it down. Alright, so now that we got the rotor, or the caliper on, sorry, my bad. We're going to clean off our little caliper slider here. Just like that. And now, using a little bit of brake pad, or silicone brake lubricant. There's a big air bubble in there. Just going to put a little dab of it on there. Then we're going to slide it into the pad, or into the caliper. Come on. There we go. You kind of have to wiggle the caliper a little bit while pushing on it from the back side to get it to sit into its respective screw hole. And then once we got a few threads in, it's all good. Do the same thing to the other slider. Clean it off. And a little bit of grease in there. Again, push the caliper and move it around a little bit. And that should get, as you push on the back of the screw, that should get that lined up. Okay, and then we'll tighten this guy down. Of course, make sure your ratchet's tightened before you go wrenching anything down, or else you're going backwards. Okay, and make sure that guy's snug. Don't tighten it too hard, because if you do, then you might put the top one in a bind. Doesn't matter which order you tighten them in.
but basically you just want to snug the bottom one or top, snug the first one, then snug the second one. Okay, then tighten it up. Then we want to double check the bottom one. It's tight. Double check the top one. It's tight. And then recheck the bottom one. It's tight. And double check the top one once again. It's tight. I always check everything 4 times to make sure it's all good. Because there's nothing worse than worrying about if you didn't tighten something up well enough. So now what we do, I'm going to take these little plastic caps, stick them back in their holes. There it is. These are nice because they prevent moisture and junk from attacking the sliders and whatnot. Alright. Here we go. Now the brunt of the brake job is all complete. All we have to do is put the wheels back on and take it for a test drive. Before that I got a little bit more work on this car, but we will certainly fast forward through that through the magic of YouTube. Alright, so let's put the wheels on first. I think before we actually put the wheels on, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping. This brake dust is nasty. If you grind it into the floor, it never wants to come out. Since I don't feel like pressure washing my garage floor, we're going to take the easier route and just sweep it away. Now this is a tricky thing to put this wheel back on, because of course none of the studs line up, because there are none. So the trick with these ones is just to kind of sit it on the hub, kind of keep one hand in there. I don't know if you can see too well, you kind of keep your hand on there holding it in place. You gently thread one of the bolts in. Now I'm not gunning it down yet, I'm just threading it in using the socket on the end of the gun. And that'll typically hold the wheel on for long enough. You can get a couple of bolts in. It's kind of nice not having the studs in the way when doing brake jobs, but man, is it a real pain when you're trying to put the wheels back on. Guess every upside has a downside. Put the gun in forward and we're just going to snug everything up. And that would be reverse. The reason my gun's running out of steam here is because I don't have my compressor actually on. So, now that I got these bolts snugged, yeah, this transmission's got a real lot of drag in it. Holy cow. Alright. I'm going to get the car on the ground, we're going to torque the lugs. Okay, so one more thing before I put the car on the ground. Probably can't see my foot, but I like to pop the brake pedal. So you go all the way to the floor. So that thing took up right away after about the second pump. That's pretty good. Alright. Now we know that our brakes are good. I like to check for any excessive drag. There's a lot of drag in this transmission actually, so surprisingly. So I just usually move the wheel back and forth. A little bit of a drag, but it's not that bad. Disc brakes naturally drag. That's just the way they are. This one's pretty good too. Alright, so I gotta change the thermostat on this thing. So we'll put it on the ground and take it out after I'm done after that. Alright, so by the magic of editing, I'm in clean clothes and I'm all clean again. So, let's go take this thing for a test drive. Safety first. I don't recommend putting your seatbelt on over dirty clothes, because if somebody's wearing a nice white shirt or something like that and you have grease on your shirt when you wear the seatbelt, they're not going to be too happy with you. So, make sure we got good brake pressure. Yeah, go for it. All right. So we're going down the road, probably about 50k, 30 miles an hour. We're gonna make a stop. Brakes feel good. Okay. Get into it a little bit more. Again, make a stop. Are you going or not? Stupid drivers. Go. I do admit I kind of like this car, as much as I hate working on it. So we're going a little bit quicker. Hit the brakes. I'm gonna say, brakes feel pretty good. You don't want a chattering or a shimmying in the wheel or anything of that sort. Another driver's coming. It's a nice handling little car, I do have to admit. It's probably pretty good on gas compared to the mighty Dodge, which gets like 12 miles to the gallon, but a good stomp on the brake. All right, she feels all good. And as I pull into the driveway, what are you looking at me like that for?
Sounds like a sewing machine.
It's a diesel.
Oh.
Hear that turbo? Anyhow, pardon the interruption. That's how we do brakes on an 04 Jetta, the front brakes. Not as hard as the back brakes, are they? I'll post a link in the description or in an annotation somewhere to the rear brake video if you're interested in that one. So, follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/6speeddakota, and Twitter @6speeddakota. I post new videos there. And if you have a question, please ask me on, like my Facebook page and ask me on Facebook, or send me a PM on YouTube if it's a lengthy one. If it's a simple one, just send it to me in the comments. All right, I gotta go help unpack a whole load of groceries. So, that's what I'm doing. Take it easy, everybody.